My guest today is Sarah Paige Maxwell. Sarah is a self-professed miles nerd, which she says she became after moving to Buenos Aires and beginning a digital nomad lifestyle that would otherwise be too costly without miles and points. She now shares her reward travel strategies on her website Mile Value to help others also save on travel around the world. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us today to share insights and strategies about reward travel redemptions.
You're welcome, Andrew. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I would love to start just by learning a little bit more about your background. How did you get into becoming a miles and points expert, and what have been some of the personal experiences in terms of benefits that you've enjoyed with miles and points?
Sure. To go to the beginning, I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. After that, went to college at the University of Georgia, and not too long after graduating from UGA, I relocated to Buenos Aires, Argentina, as you said. And so really a lot of the reasoning behind me getting into miles and points was starting a transient lifestyle, but being based in Buenos Aires. Argentina is at the bottom of the world, and it's quite expensive to fly to Argentina from the U.S., to other places from Argentina. And for a while there, it was actually quite expensive to fly within Argentina because there was really only one airline and it was nationalized. That's changed recently, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I got into miles and points because it was necessary, because I wanted to be able to travel around Argentina, to travel outside of Argentina, to go back home and visit my friends and family. So that had a lot to do with it. I also, moving to a big foreign city meant I have been surrounded by lots of international people who travel a lot, and I really started learning from them, my friends. Monkey see, monkey do. So that's what I did. I also met a guy named Scott Grimmer, who was the founder of Mile Value, living in Buenos Aires. He actually lived right around the corner from me. And he is the one who in the beginning told me to get a couple cards. One was the US Airways card, back when that existed, and a City AA Advantage card. And I collected the bonuses from those cards, and US Airways miles turned into AA miles. And then I used that big heap of bonus miles to travel to Thailand. I flew Cathay Pacific business class. For, I think it was, this was before the devaluation, 110,000 miles or something. And I was hooked, I flew from New York to Hong Kong to Bangkok in a flying bed with bottomless champagne, and I was 26, and the rest is history.
Awesome. I'd love to, get your perspective on sort of how has the miles and points redemption landscape changed over the years. You've been doing this for a while. I think it's probably unsurprising to say that it's gotten more difficult, but how exactly, in what ways, and what are some trends, maybe in the near to medium future, that other travel hackers like yourself should expect to come onto the scene?
Sure. So the biggest, most, industry changing shifts that we've seen started back when Delta, who tends to lead these kind of big industry shifts, Delta switched to a more revenue-based loyalty program. So that, they started on the earning side of the equation. And by that, I mean, when you pay cash to fly, you earn miles, right? You used to earn miles based on how many miles that you flew. What Delta changed back in the day was, instead of earning miles based on the distance that you flew, you earn miles based on how much your ticket cost. Eventually, American and United followed suit, as they always do, and I believe always they will always do. And now what we're seeing is, that revenue based model being shifted to the redemption side of things. So Delta, again, made the first move there. And this was actually quite a while ago, years ago, when they eradicated their award charts and started basing their mileage prices on the cash price of the ticket. Very recently in mid-November, United followed suit, and American is showing very solid signs of following suit in the near future. This is the reality that we live in. And it sucks on one hand because it's much harder to get outsized value from redemptions this way. First I should speak to the earnings side of the equation. To me, those shifts to a revenue-based earning system didn't matter as much. Still doesn't matter as much because I'm not the kind of person who earns miles and points from flying. I don't have tons of money. A, I don't have tons of money, and B, I don't fly for business and get reimbursed by my boss. I run my own small business that is this blog, Mile Value. So I earn all my miles and points from signing up for credit cards and cashing in on bonuses. So I have a really high return rate of return on all my spending. I'm almost always spending towards a minimum spending requirement for a sign-up bonus. If not, I'm like highly maximizing category bonuses on credit cards. Okay, that's how I earn all my miles and points. That's how I teach all my readers to earn miles and points. I don't write or really give advice for the kind of people that are earning their miles by flying. So therefore, the earning side of things and that shift, it didn't matter to me as much. But of course, on the redemption side, it does matter because a large part of what I have learned about and try to teach others about is how to spend your miles wisely. And when, now that we're shifting to this revenue-based model instead of having award charts where there's a published price of how much it is to fly from North America to Japan, North America to Southern South America, whatever. We have prices that are starting to reflect the actual cash price of the ticket. And then you kind of lose this opportunity for outsized value because it was those award chart sweet spots is the industry jargon, but an award chart sweet spot means, a cheap award price where, you'd spend a lot less miles using AA miles than United miles or Singapore miles than United miles, et cetera. And when we lose, that, especially that transparency, which is a whole other but related issue, that's a problem. It's harder to save, to have the correct amount of miles. You don't know if the programs are just going to change their prices whenever. But yeah, it's like, it's hard. The positive side of the shift towards the revenue-based redemption is, and this is certainly the way that the airlines are spending it. And it is actually, I believe that it probably is true and positive for a lot of travelers. They say that the majority of people spend their miles on domestic travel. Okay, so, and I haven't looked up stats on that recently, but I believe that's true. It logically makes sense. People don't always have the opportunity to fly around the world like I do because they, have jobs that require them to go to offices and they can't just take their computer with them and et cetera. So it makes sense. So if they are flying domestically and these domestic tickets are cheap, right? Much cheaper than international and premium cabin tickets where those tickets tend to be very expensive. Those were the ones that we're getting outsized value with in programs where you have award charts. If these domestic tickets are cheaper, then following that logic, the mileage prices for the domestic awards are going to be cheaper, and that is how they're spinning it, and that is somewhat true. And it's going to, and we're already seeing that. The proof's in the pudding. There are award prices now for domestic tickets within the U.S. that are cheaper than the average standard domestic one-way award used to be, and still is, often 12,500 miles. Okay, but maybe that ticket only costs $70. And why would you want to spend 12,500 miles on a ticket that costs $70 when you could spend, 30,000 miles to fly to Southern South America for a ticket that probably costs $600 or $700? I mean, so I get it. On the other hand, so it's going to be good for a lot of people, but it's going to be bad for the people who really liked using their miles for those high value awards, meaning where we could get outsized value on, paying 40,000 miles to fly business class somewhere, because those awards are going up in price because the airline tickets cost more. And the big strategy there, and the shift that the whole miles and points world is moving towards, and the experts have been doing it for a while, and now everyone's going to need to shift, is utilizing foreign programs. Because foreign loyalty programs, which now we have a lot of access to thanks to transferable credit card points, they are not based on the revenue prices of tickets. So they're still using award charts and pricing their awards on region to region. And so you can still get that outsized value. So there's still tons of opportunity, and that's why I don't think this game is over, or will be for a while. It's still quite exciting. I think it just requires a little more learning, a little more strategy. Or if you don't feel like putting in that learning, hire me. Hire me to consult you on which cards to get for your travel goals, and then hire an award booking service, which we also offer, to book your awards for you wisely, because there's plenty of those out there.
Okay, a lot of good stuff there. I want to probe into that a lot more deeply here in a moment, but you mentioned kind of these flexible point programs, because that's sort of maybe the pathway into still getting outsized reward redemptions. What are the main flexible currency point programs, branded programs that serious travel hackers, at least in the U.S., should know about? And if you could comment a little bit on their key differences and pros and cons, that'd be helpful.
Sure. So all of the major credit card issuing banks have these flexible travel points. Okay, so Chase has Ultimate Rewards. Citi has Thank You Points. American Express has Membership Rewards. Capital One recently, and wisely, I think, I actually wrote an article about this called Capital One Decides to Run with the Big Dogs, or something like that. Capital One now has points that transfer to airlines as well, instead of just having to redeem them for 1 cent each. And then so I would consider the first three that I said, Chase Ultimate Rewards, Citi Thank You Points, and Amex Membership Rewards, to be the three major currencies, because all of those points transfer at a 1-to-1 rate to various domestic and international loyalty programs, as well as some have hotel partners for hotel points. Capital One, I say, has somewhat joined the ranks. Their earning rates aren't quite as good, because they don't transfer 1-to-1. They transfer either 2 to 1.5 or 2 to 1. That is Capital One mile to airline mile. So those are the top four. And then Marriott Rewards, which recently acquired SPG. I would also consider them up there. I mean, because yes, they are hotel points, but they actually transfer to almost every single airline loyalty program that exists. Again, transfer rates not so great, 3-to-1. But if you are simply opening those cards for their bonuses and not focusing your spending on them, so again, you have a higher rate of return just working towards that bonus, then yeah, like those points can be useful, but their everyday earning rates aren't good. But it is valuable that they transfer to almost any loyalty program, so they're nice to like top off an account if you need something like that. But Yeah, I mean, these points are really going to be the key, I think, moving forward, and it's really what I encourage everyone and have for a very long time now, and it's what anyone in my shoes would, any miles and points blogger would also recommend, is that you guys should be putting your credit card spend. If you're a traveler, you should be putting your credit card spend on a card that earns one of these flexible point currencies, instead of just a card that earns purely AA miles or United miles. Because of the whole issue that I just explained, right? Like unless you're a domestic, especially economy flyer, then maybe it makes sense to put your spending on an AA or a United card. Maybe all their perks, like the free bags, free checked bags and whatnot, are worth it. And you really, maybe you only fly AA for work on the same routes or whatever. But no, in general, we need to be focusing our shift towards, understanding, learning about these foreign programs, which all these transferable points offer us access to. Every single one of those point currencies I just mentioned transfer to, at least they cover every alliance. So, Ultimate Rewards transfer to Singapore Airlines, which is in the Star Alliance, and they transfer to Flying Blue, which is in the SkyTeam Alliance. And they transfer to British Airways Avios, which is in the One World Alliance. And you'll find that holds true with each of these point currencies. So yeah, got to get on these point card trains, because that's where all the value is going to be, especially moving forward.
Is that the key to these flexible currency program redemptions, that as long as they have one airline in each of the major alliances, that's what you're looking for? And also, like, how would you think about, like, if folks are going to concentrate their energy on, say, just one or two of the flexible currency programs, how would you stack rank them?
So that kind of depends. I think that you kind of need to look at yourself and evaluate yourself as far as like what kind of travel you plan on doing. For example, the Sapphire Reserve card, which is Chase's most premium travel credit card that earns Ultimate Rewards. Ultimate Rewards transfer to, I think it's 10 now, different airline partners that cover all three alliances. But they also, a really nice perk of the Sapphire Reserve is that, you can spend your points through their travel portal for 1.5 cents each. Okay. So it's nice that gives you the option to either, and this is going to kind of dive into how do we value points here, but this is a good segue. You kind of have to look at, like you have your transferable points that can transfer to 10 airlines. So we're talking about Ultimate Rewards. So if you're going to, let's say we want to buy a ticket to Buenos Aires. Okay. So we look and we see, the flight that we want, what airline is it on? Like, what miles can I spend for that flight? Which some people don't realize, it's a United flight, but that doesn't mean you have to spend United miles on it. You can spend Singapore miles on it because they're in the same alliance. That's the key. And Ultimate Rewards transfer to Singapore miles, right? So we find out how many miles we would need to spend on this flight. Ultimate Rewards transfer 1-to-1. So that tells you how many points, you would need. And that takes a little bit of knowledge right there, as being able to look at your different options, your different loyalty programs, and say, which program am I going to spend the least amount of miles on using and for this flight. Okay. So then let's say we come to that conclusion. We find out that we're going to use Singapore because we're going to spend less miles using Singapore than United. And so we have that number of points in one hand. And then we go to the travel portal and we look up how much it's going to cost to fly to South America with cash. And that's actually a quite simple process that everyone can do. That's literally just looking up the price of a ticket. So, we look and we see how many points we're going to have to spend on that cash ticket, which depends on, with the Sapphire Reserve, like I said, you get 1.5 cents of value per point, right? So that's nice. I mean, some of the cards only offer one, like Amex, I'm pretty sure, just gives 1 cent per point for their travel portal redemptions on cash flights. But anyways, we have we have how many points we would need to spend if we bought through the travel portal on a cash flight. We have how many points we're going to spend on a flight using miles, and then we just choose, which one are we going to spend less points on. So to kind of circle back to your original question, picking which card is good for you as far as which transferable point currency card, you might not know that at first, honestly. I think it kind of takes some trial and error, because you're going to need to make redemptions, and maybe there are those nerds out there, and maybe that happens to be your readership in particular, but who want to just learn from the beginning, like which programs are going to really suit my travel needs. But I think the majority of people are going to have the incentive in the moment as time goes on and you want to book a trip. And so, you don't have to figure out like what your travel patterns are, whether that is you're flying, domestically, internationally, where you're going internationally, and, which miles are going to suit you because of those places that you go. And then you can figure out in retrospect, which card is going to work for you long term for everyday spending. That being said, bonuses are great for everybody. So, as long as you're not afraid to open up various credit cards, and you do it in a calculated fashion that doesn't hurt your credit score, and that doesn't, get you denied, because the banks are kind of onto us in that sense. It's called credit card churning, opening up lots of cards for bonuses. So they have rules, some that are published, some that are not, but that have all been hammered out by bloggers like myself over time. So as long as you follow these rules, then you'll be good. But
Okay, so sounds like
it's a science.
Yeah, totally. So even if there's not like one definitive flexible currency program that you can say right now, it sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, at least the high level process that might help somebody think through this is to first think about what are the kinds of destinations and the kinds of flights that you will likely take. Like, what suits your personality? Are you going to be traveling to South America, Europe, Asia? Are you going to travel mostly domestically, etc.? Then figure out what airlines actually will get you there, taking into consideration the partner airlines that you might be able to transfer from. And then with those airlines, go look at the flexible currency programs to see like which programs actually have the best coverage over those airlines. Is that kind of the big picture process?
Yeah, I would say that's on a high level, that's a good way to put it. There are other things to consider as well with these transferable points, like transfer times, for example. They don't always transfer instantaneously from the point program to the frequent flyer program. So, for example, Ultimate Rewards, Chase's points, they actually almost all transfer instantaneously, except to Singapore Airlines, which can take a day or two. Membership rewards, mostly instant, with the exception of a few foreign partners. Thank you points, about half of them transfer instantly. So I'm starting with like, as far as if you want those instantaneous transfers, which is important for booking scarce awards like premium cabins, then, Ultimate Rewards might be especially advantageous to you because they'd all transfer instantaneously. Membership rewards, most of them do too. Thank you points, not as quickly. And then Capital One is about the same as thank you points. About half of them are instant. The max that it usually takes, and this is usually the case for transferring to foreign loyalty programs, is a couple days, maybe 2 or 3 days. Sometimes there can be oddball situations where it's like a week. I've had a terrible situation transferring Marriott points to Etihad, which took, oh God, months. It was awful. It was god awful. And I don't recommend transferring Marriott points to foreign programs for that very reason. Also, Marriott's been through a hell of a lot recently, a really massive merger, and they changed their whole rewards program. So their tech stuff is all kinds of turned around. But point being, it's important to pay attention to those transfer times, especially if you want to book scarce awards. But there's also strategies to take to protect yourself from that. So, some programs will let you put their awards on hold, some for free. More and more these days they're starting to charge because they realize this is a nice perk and they can make money from it.
What does that mean to put it on hold? Is that like to take an advance or something?
It can mean different things, but in general it means that they save it. The airline program saves those seats for you. No one else can book it. And you have, 24 hours to a week to book. United makes you pay for, I think it's called Fare Lock. And AA Advantage actually still lets you put stuff on hold for a week for free, which is great. Although that doesn't matter so much in the context of this conversation because actually, interestingly, there's no transferable point currency that transfers to AA Advantage still. But a lot of programs now let you put things on hold. So take advantage of that if you can, especially with international and premium cabin awards. It's very important because that stuff is very fickle. And let me tell you, it is so frustrating when you put in all the work to find your perfect dream award and then it disappears while your points are transferring. So pay attention to the transfer times and just, understand that there's a lot of balls in the air with this process.
Is there somewhere where folks can actually see for each flexible currency program, what are the transfer times to each of their partners? Mm-hmm. Where can people see that?
Indeed. Yeah, no, I have those all listed in charts on my website. They are various blog posts. So I believe they all have the title of how long does it take Ultimate Rewards to transfer? How long does it take membership rewards to transfer, or transfer times of X points. So I have charts that show all these transfer times that I update periodically.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. A while back, you were talking about how to value points, and I was curious, mm-hmm. Especially for premium or international travel, maybe especially for premium cabin in international travel.
Yes.
Do you tend to think about the value of points in terms of the price of the sticker price of the ticket, or mm-hmm. like your personal willingness to pay? Like what's your rule of thumb on how to think about that? Because, even though you may be, even though a point redemption may be, on the more expensive side for a premium cabin international award, mm-hmm. Should that matter if you yourself were not going to be willing to pay cash for that anyway? Like, should those things be decoupled essentially?
I think they should be. I think that you should absolutely pay attention to that. And, from my perspective, when I'm figuring out the value of an award, I am going to take the true value of an award, which I do not think is necessarily the sticker price. I think it's going to be the lesser of either the true cost or your perceived value. So with a, premium international cabin award like you were talking about a second ago, that's often going to be the perceived, subjective value. Because no, I'm not going to spend $10,000 on a first class flight. Like, absolutely not. Maybe somebody else would. And this is like a key thing to circle back to too, is like the value of a mile is so incredibly personal. And you can use bloggers, we all have our estimated values, but I think if you're really going to dive into this game, it's very crucial that you hammer out your own valuations over time, because value is so subjective. It is so subjective. So no, I take the lesser of either the sticker price or the perceived value. And the way that it could work on the other end of things, which people don't really think about, as far as, I think the obvious example is the first class flight example of it costing $10,000. But no, I think I would really more likely value that at about $2,000 or $3,000. The other end is, because you always have to balance things out, right? There's a $200 economy flight, and it happens to be only cost $200, but this flight's really important to you because you need to fly across the country to propose to your girlfriend, and the perceived value there is, I don't know, $4,000 because you got to get there for this moment that's so important. But the sticker price is $200. So it works on both ends. It makes more sense thinking about it from the first class example, but you have to take the lesser of either the sticker price or the perceived value.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice and something important to keep in mind, because I think it can be easy to just sort of robotically think like, oh, the sticker price, and not really just take a moment to think about what it's actually worth to you.
Sure. Yeah, I think people really, especially some miles nerds, really get off on, oh, I got like 20, cents of value per mile. And I'm sorry, I just don't believe them when they say that, because these people, all of us that are in this hobby do it. A lot of us do it because we're cheap, and like, I'm not going to pay $10,000 for a first class flight because I value value.
I love it.
So,
the other thing I was curious to get your thoughts on are, let's say you have it in your mind that you want to fly, say, from New York to Buenos Aires or something like that. And there's many ways you can get there. There's in terms of the redemption part. So you can look up on a travel portal to see what the price of the ticket is. But then the next step is to figure out like what partner airlines or the actual metal you're flying yourself is going to be the best value in terms of the redemption. Is there some tool that folks can use that's like publicly available to basically make those kind of apples to apples comparisons to say, I want to go to Buenos Aires, which is going to be the highest value or lowest cost redemption in terms of award bookings? Is there some resource that folks can use for that?
There is, and I'm pretty sure I'm looking it up right now. I'm pretty sure it's miles.biz. Or something along those lines.
Okay.
Was the last time nope, that's not it. Doesn't look like that's it. But I wish I had the exact URL to give you. But let's see, Miles Biz. Yep, found it. The Global Frequent Flyer Miles Calculator. So it's miles.biz/en/index.php. I can send you the link after this.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd love to link to that.
Yeah, and I think that, there's probably other tools like this out there. Maybe there's one even better. I wouldn't put all your eggs in that basket. I think it's a really great tool to start off with to see your options, especially when you're trying to compare, like you have these transferable points and you're not sure about the programs and you need a little help. And I think it's somewhere to start. But these tools are not always considering the intricacies and nuances of award programs, which are really hard to build into algorithms and software when these programs are constantly changing. That's why Miles blogs exist. So it's a good place to start, but I would, take what you find and then research it further or use an award booking service.
By researching it further, do you mean like actually going to verify on the airline's website or the partner airline's website to actually see that point amount is still the same?
Yes, I would definitely do that as a means of double checking it. And if you're trying to do anything, a little bit more complicated as far as stopovers or an interesting routing, then you need to start diving into the terms of the loyalty programs on just Googling, just good old fashioned Googling. And then also, looking through the information that us Miles bloggers write about, that I write about on Mile Value, that other Miles bloggers write about, and that people share information about on sources like, I would say Reddit is probably the best one.
The particular subreddits you recommend?
Let's see. There's a Reddit, churning is a good one for people that want advice about credit card strategy as far as like I was talking about before, applying and opening cards in a calculated way that, will, more likely grant you approvals and more cards and bonuses over time, and not hurt your credit score, because we don't want to do that. And let me just to say a small disclaimer while I have the opportunity. People, don't get into this game if you can't pay your credit card bills every month. This game is not meant for you. And no shame on you whatsoever. I do not judge, but this hobby is for people who can pay their bills every month, because if you don't, then the fees and interest that you pay will far outweigh the value that you're getting from your rewards.
All right, noted. Okay, so flexible currency programs. One thing I wanted to ask is some programs like Chase's program, they have a portal directly on their website where you could redeem there. You could redeem for flights, you could redeem for an iPad or whatever. And I was curious, what are some of the trade-offs that somebody should think about when deciding whether to transfer flexible points out to partner airlines versus redeeming directly in the issuer's own portal? Are there situations where redeeming in the portal actually makes more sense? And what's the best way to think about that?
Yes. Sometimes there are situations in which redeeming through the portal is going to make more sense. I honestly think that is only going to be the case if you're redeeming from the Ultimate Rewards portal from the Chase Sapphire Reserve card, because they offer 1.5 cents. It's going to come down to math, but just to as a generality, to make things easier, I will say if you don't have that card, I wouldn't even bother looking at the portal. I think if you're actually concerned with maximizing your miles. But it comes back down to the equation I was talking about, or the situation I was talking about earlier, of figuring out first, how many points you're going to spend through the portal, looking that up, easy search, point A to point B, whatever. And then you need to find out how many miles you could spend, which transfer partner you're going to use the least amount of miles with for that same flight that you want. Compare, which one you're going to spend less points with, and transfer that way accordingly. The times when it will be worth, booking through the portal are going to be most likely for domestic economy flights, because those are the cheap flights. That being said, what you really need to consider is the potential value of your points in this situation. Okay, so going back to the example I was speaking of earlier, you find a flight that it's $70. So using United miles, it costs 12,500 miles. It's a one-way economy flight, across the U.S. and, let's probably $70 wouldn't get you across the U.S., but let's say across 4 states. And, it only costs, 8,000 points through the travel portal. So if someone just looked at that without thinking about the potential value of your points, then you would say, oh, hey, let's use my points through the travel portal. 8,000 points is way less than 12,500. Great. And that's nice to have that option for sure. I think it's great. But what you need to consider is you could save those 8,000 points and really get more like around a 2 cent per point value if you wait and spend them on that trip to China that you've been wanting to take, or to Europe, where you're going to be able to use, 30,000 of your points, or let's say 70,000 to get to Europe, 60,000 to get to Europe in business. And that flight costs so much money. And it's also just, the value again of like the experience. And if your cash flow isn't a problem, which I assume it's probably not if you're the kind of person who is even considering this as a hobby, then don't spend your points on cheap domestic economy flights. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've done it. Like, we all do it sometimes because, hey, it seems free. But think about the the potential value that the opportunity cost of doing that, right? So
yeah, that's really great advice.
That's the way I think about it.
Okay. Are there when you transfer out flexible points to a partner, are there any tips or strategies that folks should be aware of? Certainly the time it takes for the points to post is something that should pay a lot of attention to, precisely to save the heartache and frustration that you were explaining earlier. Are there any other things that folks should keep in mind?
Transfer bonuses is a big thing. Transfer bonuses are, what I mean by that is occasionally, and with some programs it's even regularly, periodically, programs will offer an incentive to transfer membership rewards to, for example, British Airways Avios. And this is a good example because this is a regular one that happens every year, and it's happened every year for the last, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years, and definitely for the last 3 years. It's happened in the last 6 months of the year, where they'll give you 40% more miles if you transfer during this certain period of time. And they'll announce, they'll publicize it, and they'll say, if you transfer your membership rewards between now and a month from now, then you'll get 40% more points.
And BA underwrites
and then
that?
You can spend less of your points overall. You're getting a much higher in the end cents per mile value. So that's great.
Is the credit card company underwriting that, or is BA underwriting that?
It depends. I'm not actually sure in the example that I gave. Sometimes it's coming from the loyalty program. Sometimes it's coming from the credit card company. Sometimes it's, I think, coming from both, or like some sort of mutual agreement. But they're nice to pay attention to, because especially the ones that have more of a schedule to their transfer bonuses, where they'll do it during a certain time of year or annually, and you have especially if you can be flexible with your travel and wait to have a little patience and wait to transfer your points at that time, then you're going to save a lot. And I also have blog posts about this very thing that have recorded all the last transfer bonuses from Ultimate Rewards to all their partners, membership rewards to all their partners, thank you points, etc. And the regularity with which they happen, when they happen, how much the percentage bonus was. But by far, membership rewards, I'm pretty sure, offers the most transfer bonuses. And I'll just go ahead and say too, in general, I think these days the membership rewards partners, transfer partners, are the most valuable. They have more of them than Ultimate Rewards. Ultimate Rewards lost sorry, I'm digressing from your question a little bit, but I think it's a good opportunity to touch on this. Ultimate Rewards recently have lost some key partners like Korean Air, and Membership Rewards has a solid list. And there's just they have some really great foreign programs that offer some really amazing sweet spots. That being said, Amex cards are a little bit harder to earn points through if you are just kind of like me and try to earn a lot of your points by collecting a lot of bonuses, because Amex doesn't focus on that. Doesn't seem to be their marketing scheme. They do have some big bonuses, and they will occasionally offer, for example, like on the Amex Platinum card, they'll offer 100,000 points for the Amex Platinum personal card and whatnot. But it's easier to earn big batches of points through like Ultimate Rewards. But anyways, I think for the long term, for people who just kind of want to spend on like 1 or 2 cards and are really interested in maximizing their miles, I think Membership Rewards is the way to go for the future. But one last thing I'll say about that is that if you're really trying to get into this game and churn credit cards and maximize your potential bonuses you can earn over time, start with the Chase cards before anything else. I don't care what kind of traveler you are, where you live, where you want to travel to. This is actually the easiest and most simple direct advice I can give to people starting off that aren't afraid of opening credit cards in numbers, is start with the Chase cards, because Chase caught on to all of us way before any of the other banks did, and they are the strictest with approvals. So once you've opened 5 credit cards from any bank, not just Chase, any bank, they will, 5 personal credit cards, I should say, they will stop approving you for their offers, for their cards. And they have a lot of lucrative travel cards, and a lot of lucrative bonus offers. So, from that perspective, to maximize, start with 5 Chase cards. Business cards don't count, and that it's called the 524 count in our lingo. So you don't have to count the business cards in that amount. But yeah, start with the Chase cards, and I have a series of posts that kind of directs beginners on that too, on mile value. Just don't forget that, because you can leave a lot of value on the table if you just start applying willy-nilly and don't start with the Chase cards. All
right, good tip. Are there efficient ways for folks to stay up to date or stay informed about, you were mentioning earlier, there are still these opportunities for outsized rewards, but you probably have to dig a little deeper, work a little harder, because you're going to have to basically be doing hops across different partner airlines. Are there efficient ways to stay informed about sort of these redemption arbitrage opportunities and inefficiencies that arise, which I guess is because these airlines, they're not constantly all talking to each other every day, and so these pockets of inefficiency can arise. How can folks like you and me stay abreast on where those inefficiencies arise?
So I think a really good place to start is, I don't want to sound like this is so much of a self-promotion, but it's honestly true. And I don't just mean follow me. Follow me and follow various miles bloggers, because we all have different niches and different voices and personal incentives, which I personally think is a really big drive behind all of our writing. So we all have newsletters, that go out. That go out either every day or whenever there's new content published. Subscribe to our newsletters. Follow us on Twitter, which tends to be the primary space for Miles and Points news. And I mentioned Reddit earlier. I think Reddit is a huge source of information for following these sort of these sweet spots and changes in the programs, and they close one loophole and we find another. And it's not, when I say we, I don't just mean bloggers. I mean the whole community of writers, of readers, of all of the travel hackers. And Reddit is a big place we talk about it. It used to be Flyer Talk. That was the big space, is an old school kind of forum. People still post there, and you can check Flyer Talk, certainly. I think it should be noted as a source, but I really think that a lot of that conversation has been moved to Reddit. And my last thing I'll mention is pointsbuzz.com, which is basically just a website that lists a lot of the top travel bloggers, Miles and Points specifically bloggers, and it just has their running list of the top 10 posts, their most recently published last 10 posts. So you can just kind of skim the headlines from everyone and choose the ones that look interesting to you.
Awesome.
So I think, yeah.
Okay, cool. Are there any other best practices or strategies that folks should know about when it comes to maximizing point redemptions, whether it's seasonality or day of week or lead time or whatever it is?
Seasonality, something to really acknowledge is miles aren't going to be really usually that useful during peak travel times. So if you're wanting to get, max value out of your miles, don't expect to get the max value out of your miles flying your family of 4 to Australia in business class at Christmas. It's not going to happen. It might happen. I shouldn't say it's not going to happen. It might be a needle in a haystack sort of situation, but, avoid peak travel times if you can. If not, and that is, I get it. People are bound to to holidays because of children's, when they get off or time off school. Fine. Like, you need to book out as far as possible. So start looking at award space options as soon as they release the space, which is, or as soon as it starts appearing on their websites. So typically that's 11 months is the average, I would say. You can't look any further ahead than that, but start looking, and you can also just, if you're really concerned with booking on peak travel days, look at your program that you're trying to book with and see, okay, like the award space is released 11 months out, 12 months out, and then set something in your calendar so that you go to look at that point and say, 11 months before your travel date and say, okay, like this is when I'm starting the investigation. And that's when you start keeping a pulse on it. Let's see, as far as, what were the other points you just brought up? Let's see.
I was just curious in general, like, are there other best practices that you would suggest?
I think that pretty much sums it up.
By the way,
flexible. Actually, there is one more thing, and especially with first class, especially with first class, and sometimes with business class too. But I would say especially with first class, there are airlines that will release extra seats like a week or two within the travel date. So that's only going to work for people who are really flexible, And I get that someone wants to fly to first class. Fly to Japan in first class. They don't want to wait until a week or two before. That's like they've been saving all their miles and this is like a big deal. And to leave it to that much chance is terrifying. But sometimes that's the name of the game, is that if you really want that seat, then maybe you need to wait.
Got it. By the way, what's generally considered good redemption value in your view?
It really depends on the, I try to give valuations for every loyalty program. I'm actually in the process of going through and redoing all mine at the moment. But for the legacy carriers, so by legacy I mean, United, American, and Delta, it kind of varies between 1.2 or 3 and 1.6 or 7 cents per mile. Foreign programs often get a higher value than that. Transferable points also get their own values because, they have the added value of the option to transfer to all these different programs, right? So, for example, I value Ultimate Rewards around, I think the last time I checked, like, I can typically get around 2 cents per point, but I think probably more realistic is like 1.8 cents per point or something like that. And then membership rewards is very similar. Thank you points a little bit lower than that. But, it also just depends on like the options you have to redeem. So again, if you have something like the Sapphire Reserves Porto and you can get 1.5 cents, then that's a different story. But I would say, ranging between 1.3 and 2 cents.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us, Sarah. It's incredibly helpful. Where can people find out more about you and your work and what you're up to?
Yeah, so my blog is milevalue.com. We have a Twitter account at milevalue, a Facebook page for Mile Value, and beyond just being we are a blog in essence, but I also have a team of amazing award bookers who will help you maximize your miles. They're experts, so it takes them way less time than you, and they can spend less of your miles than you would doing it. So it's really a win-win. And then I also offer, so that's more on the redemption side of things, how we can help. On the front end, the earning side is where I come in and I offer credit card consultations. So for a small fee over email and for a slightly larger fee over the phone, I offer both. And then, there's the blog content, which is there for you to learn and do it all on your own if you want. You don't have to pay for our services, but our services are there for you if you feel like being lazy.
All right. Awesome. Well, we'll link to all that stuff in the show notes, and look forward to sharing all your wisdom with folks on the podcast. Thank you so much again for taking the time to chat with us.
No, thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I really, really enjoyed our time today.
Cheers. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.